So the astrology of the week of 25 April 2022 through 1 May 2022 is one to release into. It's a week of releasing into this first eclipse of 2022, a solar eclipse in Taurus that's very auspiciously configured because the ruler Venus is with Jupiter in that same degree. So we're releasing into change this week. That's the major theme. And let's just dive right in here to the configurations, the charts, everything that I do here in this video every week. My name is S.J. Anderson. Welcome to my channel, Weekly Astrology. I dive into the astrology, try to extract some themes that you might find useful, that I think are relevant and useful as we navigate reality, as we move through this thing called life, using astrological symbols as a guide, using astrological symbolism or the symbol set of the planets or planetary symbols to help us. They communicate to us is really what happens. They're communicating at every moment in time. There is a kind of planetary consciousness. Dane Rudyard, the astrologer, calls it the planetization of consciousness. And that's where we understand any moment through an analysis or a working with these planetary symbols. And that's just really one way to look at astrology. It's very simple. The symbols communicate something. The moment, the facts are showing something, and then you marry those things and you interface between those things. And so that's what I'm doing here. Welcome. Let's just dive in. I'm going to talk about these three major themes that I think this week encompasses. The first one is this Pisces Moon. This Pisces Moon, which is conjoined and co-present with both Venus and Jupiter. And this is the only Pisces Moon until 2033 that will have the Moon with Venus and with Jupiter. And that's because Venus moves 3.5 weeks through the zodiac. And so you'd have to catch it perfectly to get 2 in a year. Very unlikely. So, this is one to really enjoy. The exaltation ruler of Pisces, the domicile ruler of Pisces, with that moon that's the great activator of the sky. The second transit that I want to talk about is, and by the way, sorry, that Pisces moon comes on the 25th. So this Pisces moon comes Monday at about noon. We kick off the Pisces with this Pisces moon. So it really sets the tone for the week. We come out of this Aquarius moon and then get to engage with and enjoy this singular moment of the two rulers of Pisces with the moon. So and that Pisces moon lasts until Wednesday at about 6 p.m. here in Central Europe. So it's really a nice pocket, a lunar pocket to enjoy this week. So the second major theme is Mercury will enter Gemini. It's been a long time coming for Mercury because Mercury does not enter a sign of its domicile, say for the springtime, and into that late springish, and then it comes into summerish because this is Gemini Virgo, and those are the two signs Mercury rules. Mercury travels very close to the sun, and so you really get powerful Mercuries in spring and summer, and we're getting into that Mercury season now. And so it's great. It's going to shake up the domicile tree we've had for months. Jupiter and Saturn as the only two planets in the sign of their domicile. Now we get Mercury to join that group, and we'll have a trifecta of final dispositors. And then the final transit that and that Mercury entering Gemini happens on the day of the eclipse. It's on the 30th, which is which is Saturday. So Saturday's the big day. Saturday's eclipse day. Saturday's the day that Mercury enters Gemini here in Central Europe. We're kind of culminating and building. We're already in this eclipse vortex and window. The energies are quite potent and strong. And so this is the larger context of the whole week, is being pulled into this eclipse moment. But this is my third transit. My third kind of major theme this week is this solar eclipse in Taurus, which brings the power of fated beginnings and endings. My favorite phrase to deal with eclipses: fated beginnings and endings. Accelerated fatedness is my other favorite phrase. You all heard it if you've watched my videos for a while. But we're entering into the Taurus and Pisces sectors as the subjects of this fated twists and turns that eclipses can be known for. So that's big. It happens this week. It's the first eclipse of 2022 of 4. And I think we're now going to set the tone for the year and for the rest of the year, because the eclipse it's like refracted light. It comes in and then the light shines out differently after those eclipses happen. And we'll have a lot of changes in the transiting sky. After these two eclipses, we'll have Jupiter in Aries. Mars will soon come to Aries. We'll have this heavy Arian or Aries. Arian is probably not the best word to use there, but pardon me, Aries energy. Heavily activated, the most it's been activated in a long time. That's a passionate, active force that we'll be able to engage in after these eclipses. And so just ride these waves of Pisces and Taurus. And when we come out the other side, it'll be go time, I think, for a lot of us and a lot of parts of our lives. So those are the three major stories, and that eclipse arrives in the evening, actually, in Central Europe on Saturday, 22:28 here in Central Europe, so midday there in other parts of the world. Okay, let me come. Actually, you know what I want to do? I want to quickly, I didn't include this in this video, but I just want to check out the eclipse path. That's really important when you think about eclipses, is where is the eclipse happening. And so I want to just check that briefly here, just in the introduction of this video. Okay, so there's the map. You can see it. It's Antarctica and in Chile and Argentina. So that's interesting. Maybe Chile and Argentina are going to have some kind of activation. The eclipse timing can sometimes be a year or two before the events of an eclipse come to their dynamic unfoldment. This is based on Ptolemy. Some of the ancient astrologers developed timing tools. I'm not going to talk about it much more. It's just good to know we're looking at South America as maybe the region that may be most affected by this eclipse. I do not know what's happening down there. It makes me want to research that, and I probably will later today just to check in with South America. So those are the major themes. Let's shift to this first chart. The first chart is the transit of the week. I've pulled up here a chart for Wednesday at 10 in the morning in the Balkans, in the Western Balkans where I live. And you see that I've captured here the moon in the later degrees. I think that's very important with this transit of the week. One of my major electional astrological principles is I very much like to have the moon not co-present or not a sign-based angularity with Mars or Saturn. It's one of the most important principles for how I use electional astrology. And unfortunately this week, the choice here is between a Pisces moon or an Aries moon, or you could pick the Taurus moon. The Taurus would be sign-based square to Saturn, which will be an aspect that's present during this eclipse. The Aries moon, the issue with it is that the moon is not configured to anything but Saturn. And so as soon as the moon enters Aries, there's no aspects. It's just applying to Saturn during that whole transit. And I just don't like that, especially when you compare it to this Pisces moon, where you can get the moon with Venus and Jupiter. The only time they'll be co-present, those three together, like I said, until April 2033. And Mars is so far away, it's on that earlier edge of the sign, that maybe this can somehow mitigate the Martial moment and this kind of Martial pileup. Unfortunately, this moon will not be enclosed between Venus and Jupiter because Mercury breaks up that enclosure. But still, like the chart I've picked here, Wednesday 10 in the morning, you have the moon with the midheaven, with Jupiter, applying there to Jupiter in this chart. And it's actually in this chart, I don't think Mercury is breaking up the enclosure. So there is a moment, this is actually a moment of benefic enclosure between Venus and Jupiter. I haven't pulled up the lunar mansion there, and I'm not going to do that on the fly. I just think the opportunities here are around Pisces and the Piscean themes. And let me shift over to what I've written in this slide. Pre-gaming the eclipse, because Pisces plays such an important role, not only in the eclipse that happens on Saturday, but also the eclipse 2 weeks later, because Mars will be in Pisces ruling that lunar eclipse in Scorpio. And so we're now can pregame with Pisces. We got the moon activating Pisces, the moon here mixing with the exaltation and domicile ruler of Pisces. I have here, it's a waning moon, so there's a sense of letting go. There's a sense of releasing into the eclipse moment. And I think it's an important strategy whenever I think about eclipses, is to let go, is to just not hold on to life so tight, and see what the eclipse is, where it's pulling you. There's a certain sense of being ready and open to where the energies may be pulling you in this particular set of configurations. And so I like this kind of open-minded, loose attitude that I think is a very Piscean thing. It's very much part of the Piscean archetype. Shifting waters, fish, the two fish that you see fish, they're swimming around, they're flowing with the stream and with the current. And so it's kind of be like water. This might be the Bruce Lee, the famous video where he says, be like water, moving. And you might want to pull that up to get some Piscean inspiration for these eclipses. But this moon is a perfect kind of embodiment of that, flowing, just going with the flow. Maybe that's the best phrase here. But as a strategy, as a deliberate choice to say, I'm just going to go with the flow right now. Let these eclipses hit. Let these eclipses emerge and do their thing. And then just see where we are on the other side of them when we have these radical reconfigurations of the sky, particularly Jupiter in Aries. So, and then a Mercury retrograde that we'll wait for, and then we'll really kind of be moving into June. Gets fascinating with some really excellent astrology. So let's come back here. The cleansing storms of Pisces. There's one way to look at this of how do we beautify in the chaos, in the uncertainty and the mystery and the sense of unreality that Pisces can bring. I don't know if you've been feeling that. I've kind of been feeling a sense of, nothing is real, nothing to get hung about, the Strawberry Fields idea. I know I make these references a lot, but I do think Strawberry Fields is a very, very Piscean song. And it was actually released with some heavy Pisces when that single was released, I believe. It's just by theme, the idea of what is real. And then, you bring Neptune here in this chart, and in these charts, you see Neptune very close to Venus and Jupiter here, which contemporary astrologers will say Neptune symbolizes a sense of not unreality, dissipation into the unknown, kind of a breaking down of selfhood. So I think that these cleansing storms of Pisces, I don't think you need Neptune to understand this, but it certainly underscores the idea that we have mystery and a sense of unreality and uncertainty. I've been feeling kind of trippy, there feels like we're, think about what's happened since 2020. We have the crisis with the health and all of the changes in society that resulted from that. And then we have this period of bellicose, activity in Eastern Europe that's strange, and that's still ongoing, and we're kind of in between these crises, and they're kind of lingering crises, and I feel like there's this economic stuff with the inflation. There's just a lot of weirdness, things we haven't experienced in most of our lifetimes, depending on how old you are, very often. And so I think that's part of the kind of mystery or sense of unreality. But I have here, there's a dignity in adornment for its own sake. And I think about, people that if you're on a long trip or something, there's some kind of dignity getting into that airport bathroom, washing your face a little bit, maybe putting on some fresh clothes. There's some kind of dignified way we can carry ourselves, or it's an expression of self-love to maybe put on, wear the watch you like, or the necklace, or the jewelry you like. Maybe this is a time to get out some of that jewelry you don't wear. And, just engage with adornment, try it on, see if that can alter or change perceptivity. I think I love that for this Piscean moment because of Venus there, and then this whole eclipse moment because these two planets, Jupiter and Pisces, will be here for the eclipse. And we'll talk more about that later when I go into the eclipse slide. But, basically the main thing about this chart is letting go and releasing into the eclipses and appreciating the things you have and that you enjoy, and maybe loving, yourself with some outward expressions of that. I think can be quite useful for this moment. Okay, let me shift now to the next chart. This is Mercury into Gemini. This happens on Saturday, right after midnight here in Central Europe, 24. So you're talking about Friday in North America, later on Saturday down under. But this is important. Mercury into Gemini is quite important because it does give us, it takes the responsibility off of Saturn and Jupiter. And now we have powers here with Mercury that will be a part of the next 2 months, because Mercury will station retrograde on the 10th of May. So only 10 days out from this moment, 9 to 10 days out from this moment. This is something where you may want to get done trips, travel, plans, doing things before this Mercury station retrograde. So there's kind of a rush here now with this power Mercury in Gemini, using it to kind of get things completed, and then we settle into a retrograde and we'll endure that Mercury retrograde. So that's an important part of it. But the other thing is that we have more words, more ideas, better communication powers, like I've written here, changes made for a purpose. The strategic side and trickery of Mercury. These are people that are out maybe, busking or performing for cash. This kind of mercurial power, where you actors, you're shifting and changing as a way to communicate things. I think there's a certain guile that Mercury in Gemini portends and supports that we have for this 10 days. And so I really like coming in under the deadline before Mercury goes retrograde. Now, the problem is that it's eclipse season. And so I'm not suggesting you use this for some kind of dynamic election, that you're waiting for something really important, but it's just good to know, and this is what I have on this next slide, is that the trickery and wordplay as a component of eclipse season, and words tether us to reality. And so as the eclipses bring this sense of uncertainty with the Piscean activation and the eclipse activation, sometimes we can even just say words to stay grounded. I know my friend was telling me about an ayahuasca brew that he made, and he was losing a sense of reality, very Piscean, drinking the ayahuasca. And he said that it was just like certain prayers or mantras, I forgot what he said, he was repeating words as a way to stay in his body and basically survive the intensity, the psychic intensity of an ayahuasca trip. And so this is the kind of strategy we can use here. If things are going haywire as a result of Piscean dominant ruled eclipses, you can always just come back to like your lists in your journal. I am a human being. I love myself. I love others. God, show me what you would have me do in this lifetime. These are some of the things I like. But just basic kind of phrases that to be true, and repetition with those phrases as a grounding strategy or a grounding tool. And conversely, you may want to just explore with the written word the uncertainty. Life is unknown right now. I don't know, this could happen, or this could happen, or this could happen. You can bring the various levels of uncertainty into through language, using language to cope with and manage it with what you're feeling. So I love that Mercury will be in Gemini for this first solar eclipse. Now it does retrograde back into Taurus for the second eclipse. I believe it will not be in Gemini. Let me just check it again. I can't make a claim without getting it checked here. 14 May 2022. Mercury is actually, Mercury will still be in Gemini for the second eclipse as well. Good, I'm glad I checked that. So we have the Mercury in Gemini powers for both of the eclipses. And I think that this isn't going to change, actually. Mercury comes into Taurus later in May. What do I have here? It's the 10th of May is what you're looking for. The second stint of Mercury in Gemini is the one other thing I wanted to mention here, because it comes back, it stations direct in like 3 June in Taurus, and then re-enters Gemini. And Mercury's re-entry to Gemini after its retrograde, picking up steam and speed in Gemini, I think that's where I'm at least planning for some movement potentially, to do some things. It'll be almost summer, Mars in Aries, Jupiter in Aries, Mercury in Gemini now moving forward. There's actually a moment there where you'll have Venus in Taurus. You'll have four planets with domicile dignity: Mars, Mercury, Venus, and Saturn still. And that'll be a really nice time after eclipses to settle into the newness or the changes that they brought to your life. So, okay, let me come back and let me get the date up on that. I was finding the exact date of Mercury back into Gemini, just to give everybody out there a heads up. That's going to be 13 June. And you'll have, that's the moment, 13 June, where you get this splay of dignified planets, something to be excited about for sure as we come into summer. Now, let me come back to the little scattered, I guess. Sometimes it's what's good when I can do this. This is kind of live, I record these and I'm just sort of flowing here, and it's nice to have the ability to pull charts up and check in things as I'm moving. Okay, the last thing I wanted to mention here, mantras for the eclipse. Mercury is the communicator of the gods. It's a planet of magic. And you might have techniques of spirituality that are mercurial, that because Mercury is in Gemini during eclipse season, where there's a component where maybe those techniques can be utilized. And there's this, I like mantra. I'll put on Rahu mantra for this solar eclipse because it's near the north node, and then I'll put some Ketu mantra on for that south node eclipse. And I just, appreciate listening to them. It does give me some grounding and some feeling like I'm connecting to something beyond me. I really like them. And my suggestion is just Google Ketu mantra, Rahu mantra into YouTube, and then find the ones that make you feel good. That I like ones that are musical, that just give that music, and listen to those if you're feeling a little untethered. So this may be part of that mercurial strategy, using language and words to tether yourself. The final thing I'll just say, eclipse magic. It comes up every year with eclipses on Twitter. People go berserk and they're fighting, do the magic, don't do the magic. I personally, I like to make a distinction between all reality is magical every moment, right? This is a beautiful mystery of incarnation. I'm in a physical body. This is like my avatar for however many years you get the avatar, and I can perceive reality around. So it's magical. My thoughts are constantly going, and how I use my brain influences what's happening on the outside. So there's an ongoing sense of magic. I don't think eclipses mean we have to turn that away or cease to acknowledge the magical. For me, it's just a question of attitude. I really prefer submission as a theme. And so it's more prayerful submission, and maybe even pausing the assertion of will, the assertion of power of what do I want in this incarnation. And it's more of a supplication or a petition, or I would say not even petitioning anything. It's a supplication. Help me, show me, thank you. That's my favorite way and that's magical in its own right. Kind of deliberate gestures of submitting to divine reality is a practice, and I think that's something that we can do for sure as a magical practice during this time. So, but some astrologers have elected to release books on eclipses, and they feel like it might seed that moment with the eclipse power and sending it into a reality. If they feel moved to do that, you may feel moved to do that. I'm not going to poo-poo it or say anyone shouldn't do it. I frankly, I just don't. I just wouldn't. I just don't. I like to feel the intensity of the moment and the profundity of it, and just center that. Okay, and there's a Mercury retrograde. That's happening in between these eclipses. That alone for me would be, would give me pause after the 10th. All right, let me come back. This is a whole complicated thing, and I don't want to break it down too much more, but just know I personally, that's the style of attitude, the attitudinal model that I will bring into these next 2 weeks of eclipses, and I'm already in it now. We're already here. I'm already in it now. Okay, let me move on to this last side. This is the solar eclipse. This is that 30 April, Saturday, 22:28. Here in Central Europe, the solar eclipse. Eclipse season fadedness and intensities are in play, and they'll be ramping up. And look for this week, how you're feeling, what's changing. Look to Taurus and Pisces in your chart. Those house topics are where the changes may be most potent. Explore those house topics. Check in with yourself around those house topics, the whole sign house topics. That's why we use whole sign houses, at least in what I do and others I know, is because it's the elegance of how planets express themselves through signs and the rulership over those signs, and how those elegantly map over house topics in a way that it's very clean for identifying shifts in energies around topics. And I've seen it to be the most potent way to practice, and it's our earliest form of practice. Most scholars agree that the whole sign house system is the original system of houses. Or or at least there was some earlier like 8 divisions and things, but maybe the most popular and original division, and it's the division that's still in India. So the Vedic astrological systems, Jyotish, will use whole sign houses. So there's a long history of using it. So let me just come back here. Strong Venusian and Jupiterian tonality for these eclipses. And that's because the ruler, Jupiter, is here, Venus, the domicile ruler of Taurus, Venus, is in Pisces with Jupiter. And this is how I'm delineating this. This is how I'm thinking about this, is that all that's good in the world, right? This is what Venus and Jupiter can imply. Things that are good, useful, things we enjoy. Hope, right? They're both planets of hope and joy and enjoying things. So I have here things that are enjoyable, truth. Maybe they're not going to be so enjoyable anymore. And this is, I think, an interesting thing to consider. I love considering the eclipse from this perspective, actually. When I was thinking about this earlier, I was like, wow, this feels important. So change, you may think, is the only truth in some ways. If we're thinking about Jupiter as truth and wisdom, you can access change as the only constant. This is a philosophical principle. This is a spiritual principle in terms of Buddhism. The ever-changing nature of reality is the only true thing in terms of the Buddhist mentality, and our self is constantly being formed and reformed. But change is the only truth or the only constant. But more than that, and I want to come to the second slide, this last point here. These are my preferences. So I might have fixed ideas. This is what I like. Dang it, this is what I like. And I think these eclipses are challenging us to say, really? Are you sure? Are you sure that's what you like? Are you sure that's what you prefer? Are you sure that's what is true in your mind? And there could be a challenging or a turning over of some of our held beliefs, and maybe a sense of discovering, and that's what I have here, the third point. It's a discovery of what is pleasurable, what is valuable, and this discovery of understanding. There's deep layers of truth and beauty and pleasure, deep layers. And truth itself is something that is discovered. It's a process of discovery. And so I think that this idea of being willing to let go of what I thought I liked and discovering new pleasure, new ways to enjoy things, that this could be a major component of these eclipses. And it's exciting because, like, we change. I mean, I look back 20 years ago, the things I was into, I don't even enjoy some of those things at all now. I've had all kinds of seasons of life and seasons of preference and pleasure, and that I've reformed and morphed into this moment of who I am now and what I do and enjoy now. So look for that. And that's simply on the symbolism of Taurus and Pisces, right? This is where the thematic, symbolic kind of story lies for this eclipse moment. I have here Venus and Jupiter in the same degree. It's quite auspicious. There's no way to... I don't want to undersell. Some astrologers may be underselling this because of eclipses, but these are the two benefic planets in the same degree, and the sign Jupiter rules and the degree of Venus's exaltation or right near it, depending on the system. But there it is. They're right together. And every day this happens, like at least once or twice a year, rarely twice a year. But this moment of a Venus-Jupiter conjunction, we would think is a special moment to enjoy, and that it's kind of fused in this eclipse intensity and this faded quality or nature. I think that you can, I'm going to give myself permission to feel into Venus and Jupiter in Pisces strongly as a guiding force and a guiding kind of a rudder for whatever is going to be arriving over the next week. So I wanted to share that with you. And let's keep in mind, Saturn is squaring from Aquarius. So there's an overcoming square from Saturn and Aquarius, and it applies facing limits, and I feel like this Saturn is everything that happened in the last 2.5 years, all the crises, all the things we faced collectively or interpersonally. And this eclipse, it's almost like this eclipse we're not out of the woods with a lot of those things. I think 2022, there's going to be all kinds of twists and turns, and like I was mentioning earlier, some of these mundane factors, so these world events that are still unfolding and ongoing. This Saturn square, I think, is reminding us, hey, we're still facing that stuff. Saturn has another now about 10 months left in Aquarius, and then it'll be done for good. But I think this, we're still kind of processing and coming out. Life's a process. Things take time. it's a flow of an unfoldment. And especially with Saturn, that's the lesson, is that the way that change happens sometimes is slow, month by month, year by year. And we're still grappling with, these big changes wrought by the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction and the pileup in Capricorn in 2022, or 2020, March, and then Jupiter-Saturn conjunction later in 2020. So, okay, that's just something I'm going to leave there's more. There's another feature of this eclipse I want to bring in, and that's this fixed star, Achard, I think that's how you might say it, Achard. And it's very interesting. I saw this star, and it's 4 degree minutes. Its projected ecliptic position is 4 degree minutes from the moon's projected ecliptic position, which is moon's probably darn close to the ecliptic because it's so close to the north node, but still it's a projected position of the moon. All the planets have a projected degree position most of the time. And that's the kind of, that's one reason why I like to use projected ecliptic degree positions of the fixed stars, because we use it for every planetary point, save for the sun, right? Because it travels on the ecliptic. Let's come back though. So Achard is in the girdle. This is what Robson described it, but basically the stomach area or the abdomen area of Cassiopeia. And so we're kicked into the mythology. I love this mythology, actually. It's Perseus, it is Andromeda, and it is Cassiopeia. And this story is very Venusian and very Jupiterian and Piscean, because the idea here was that Cassiopeia says, well, I'm so beautiful, and my daughter we're so beautiful, we're more beautiful than the gods. And as a result of that, boasting, Vivian Robson calls it boasting. There's boasting about beauty, right? And then the result of that is that she's bound by a chair. There's a whole string of events related to her daughter, and then Perseus rescues her daughter. So I'm thinking back to what I was describing before about this kind of playing with adornment. It's kicked in with the theme of this fixed star as well. Beauty, adornment, how we appear to others, how we create our appearance and project that into the world around us. The nature of that. What do we expect to get back from people when we, make ourselves a certain way? The complexities of perception and intention around, physical, change. All of these rich, deep themes are in play here. So I would just encourage. I'm thinking for me, it's like I'm trying to. This is so cliche, but it's. Where I'm at with it, beauty is beyond skin deep, this kind of principle. Even for myself, as we age, it's like maybe getting changes in the appearance that I'll have to accept. We all accept our bodies, body acceptance, these kinds of things. But then on the other hand, loving ourselves and humility is as I think what we're trying to manage here is humility as the idea of being what is true, just what is true. And it's okay to say, I feel beautiful. This makes me feel beautiful. That's a true statement. And it can be wonderful to feel beauty and even share one's beauty. But then there's the kind of risks of this kind of hubris or this boasting, where it becomes a judgment around others that, my standards of beauty, I've got to kind of wear them loosely and be sure not to place those on others, and let people have their standards of beauty, and we can all be, beautiful together. And so that's what I'm going to leave it with. I think that's a major theme here. And, let's just move here. I'm going to get the tarot card, and then we'll end the weekly astrology, weekly tarot. Let's see here. This card this week is going to be all right, got it here. Let's see what it is. In my numbering system, it's the number 40, but of course, that is not, some of these I have memorized, but okay, this is interesting. This is the Queen of Spades. Wow, very, very interesting, because this is in the system of correspondences that I use for cartomancy. This would correspond to Aquarius. And so we have Saturn in Aquarius. So what about Saturn and Aquarius? I kind of want to go back to the chart here a little bit, frankly, and just check out this position of Saturn and Aquarius during the eclipse. right away, just know that this queen, it's an air queen, right? The spade, by the way, is a garden tool where you cut and you can kind of cut plants in the garden. But monks would use this tool, they would travel with it, both to garden, but then it was a weapon. And that's why spades correspond to swords, because it's a weapon. It's a garden tool weapon. And so there's depictions of the Queen of Swords in some tarot traditions with a sword and with a head, where she has taken a head from someone. And I've always read this to be the kind of severing of old ideas, that like the stale ways of viewing the world, the stale language gets severed and needs to be refreshed at times. Of course, that's quite Saturnine, right? Saturn comes in to create limits, impose structure, tell us how things have to be. And I think this jibes quite well with what I was saying earlier about discovering new values around pleasure and truth and beauty. Maybe there's going to be some severing with this eclipse with Saturn there, and we'll have to kind of let go and let pass on and pass away the older ways of thinking about the world, adapting into the new reality that we live in. 2022, I was going to look at I don't have a date a year on this watch, but it's 24 May 2022. Here we are. 24 April 2022, pardon me, but here we are. How's that? Did you think, I mean, you know, I'm thinking about, I remember 24 April 2020. I remember 24 April, so I got a notification. I remember 24 April 2002. I remember that. There was these protests ramping up for the Iraq War. I was very young. Went to some of these protests. It was wonderful, but I can't even believe it's so surreal. And this goes back to some of the surrealism of Pisces, of just being alive and continuing to live, you know, year by year by year by year. But we have to sever to survive. We have to sever old ideas. And I think that's what this card, let me go back to it, is pointing us to. This queen, surrender to the kind of the birthing of the new through the purging and letting go of the old. All right, I'm going to end it there. That is Weekly Astrology, Weekly Tarot. Have a wonderful eclipse week. Really just, you know, love yourself. That's one of my core messages. Let go, surrender, ride the waves, and, you know, you're a beautiful person, I know, and let's just celebrate that during this period. Talk to you very, very soon. Bye-bye.